Introduction. Take Back Your Life, Recovering from Cults and Abusive Relationships gives former cult members, their families, and professionals an understanding of common cult practices and their after effects. This book also provides an array of specific aids that may help restore a sense of normalcy to former cult members' lives. About 12 years ago, we wrote our first book on this topic, Captive Hearts, Captive Minds, Freedom and Recovery from Cults and Abusive Relationships. Over the years, we received mounds of positive feedback about that book in the form of letters, phone calls, postcards, emails, faxes, and personal contact at conferences and in our professional lives. Former cult members, families, therapists, and exit counselors continually told us that Captive Hearts, Captive Minds was always their #1 book. That positive reception and the need to provide up-to-date information was the impetus for this new book. We are delighted to offer this new resource to people who want to evaluate, understand, and, in many cases, recover from the effects of a cult experience. We hope this book will help you take back your life. Cults do not fade away, as some would like to believe, with the passing of the 60s and the disappearance of the flower children. In fact, cult groups and relationships are alive and thriving, though many groups have matured and cleaned up their act. If there is less street recruiting today, it is because many cults now use professional associations, campus organizations, self-help seminars, and the internet as recruitment tools. Today we see people of all ages, even multi-generational families, being drawn into a wide variety of groups and movements focused on everything from therapy to business ventures, from New Age philosophies to Bible-based beliefs, and from martial arts to political change. Most cults don't stand up to being counted in a formal sense. Currently, the best estimates tell us that there are about 5,000 such groups in the United States, some large, some remarkably small. Noted cult expert and clinical psychologist Margaret Singer estimated about 10 to 20 million people have at some point in recent years been in one or more of such groups. Before its enforced demise, the National Cult Awareness Network reported receiving about 20,000 inquiries a year. A cult experience is often a conflicted one, as those of you who are former members know. More often than not, leaving a cult environment requires an adjustment period so that you can put yourself and your life back together in a way that makes sense to you. When you first leave a cult situation, you may not recognize yourself. You may feel confused and lost. You may feel both sad and exhilarated. You may not know how to identify or tackle the problems you're facing. You may not have the slightest idea about who you want to be or what you want to believe. The question we often ask children, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" takes on new meaning for adult ex-cult members. Understanding what happened to you and getting your life back on track is a process that may or may not include professional therapy or pastoral counseling. The healing or recovery process varies for each of us, with ebbs and flows of progress, great insight, and profound confusion. Also, certain individual factors will affect your recovery process. One is the length and intensity of your cult experience. Another is the nature of the group or person you were involved with, or where your experience falls on a scale of benign to mildly harmful to extremely damaging. Recovering from a cult experience will not end the moment you leave the situation, whether you left on your own or with the help of others, nor will it end after the first few weeks or months away from your group. On the contrary, depending on your circumstances, aspects of your cult involvement may require some attention for the rest of your life. Given that, it is important to find a comfortable pace for your healing process. In the beginning, particularly, your mind and body may simply need a rest. Now that you are no longer on a mission to save the world, relaxation and rest are no longer sinful. In fact, they are absolutely necessary for a healthy, balanced, and productive life. Re-entering the non-cult world, or entering it for the first time if you were born and raised in a cult, can be painful and confusing. To some extent, time will help. Yet the passage of time and being physically out of the group are not enough. You must actively and of your own initiative face the issues of your involvement. Let time be your ally, but don't expect time alone to heal you. We both know former cult members who have been out of their groups for many years. but who have never had any counseling or education about cults or the power of social psychological influence and control. These individuals live in considerable emotional pain and have significant difficulties due to unresolved conflicts about their group, their leader, or their own participation. Some are still under the subtle or not so subtle effects of the group's systems of influence and control. A cult experience is different for each person, even for members of the same group, family, or situation. Some former members may have primarily positive impressions and memories, while others may feel hurt, used, or angry. The actual experiences and the degree or type of harm suffered may vary considerably. Some people may leave cults with minimum distress and adjust rather rapidly to the larger society, while others may suffer severe emotional trauma that requires psychiatric care. Still others may need medical attention or other care. The dilemmas can be overwhelming and may require thoughtful attention. Many have likened this period to being on an emotional roller coaster. First of all, self-blame for joining the cult or participating in it, or both, is a common reaction that tends to overshadow all positive feelings. Added to this is a feeling of identity loss and confusion over various aspects of daily life. If you were recruited at any time after your teens, you already had a distinct personality, which we call the pre-cult personality. While you were in the cult, you most likely developed a so-called new personality in order to adapt to the demands and ambiance of cult life. We call this the cult personality. Most cults engage in an array of social psychological pressures aimed at indoctrinating and changing you. You may have been led to believe that your pre-cult personality was all bad, and your adaptive cult personality all good. After you leave a cult, you don't automatically switch back to your pre-cult self. In fact, you may often feel as if you have two personalities or two selves. Evaluating these emotions and confronting this dilemma, integrating the good and discarding the bad, is a primary task for most former cult members and is a core focus of this book. As you seek to redefine and reshape your identity, you will want to address the psychological, emotional, and physical consequences of living in or around a constrained, controlled, and possibly abusive environment. And if all that weren't enough, many basic life necessities and challenges will need to be met and overcome. This may include finding employment and a place to live, making friends, repairing old relationships, confronting belief issues, deciding on a career or going back to school, and most likely catching up with a social and cultural gap. If you feel like a stranger in a strange land, it may be consoling to know that you are not the first person to have felt this way. In fact, the pervasive and awkward sense of alienation that both of us felt when we left our cults motivated us to write this book. We hope that the information here will not only help you get rid of any shame or embarrassment you might feel, but also ease your integration into a positive and productive life. We were compelled to write this book because more often than not, people coming out of cults have tremendous difficulty finding practical information. We too experienced that obstacle. Both of us faced one roadblock after another as we searched for useful information and helping professionals who are knowledgeable about cults and post-cult trauma. A matter we hope to shed light on in this book is the damage wrought by the so-called cult apologists. These individuals, mostly academics, allege that cults do no harm, and that reports of emotional or psychological damage are exaggerations, or even fabrications on the part of the disgruntled former members. Naturally, we disagree. It is unfortunate that there is still so little public understanding of the potential danger of some cults. Certainly, there are risks and harmful consequences for individuals involved in these closed authoritarian groups and abusive relationships. If there weren't, there'd be no need for cult research and information organizations or for books such as this. Added to individual-level consequences, there are documented dangers to society as a whole from cults whose members carry out their beliefs in antisocial ways, sometimes random, sometimes planned, through fraud, terrorist acts, drug dealing, arms trading, enforced prostitution of members, sexual exploitation, and other violent or criminal behaviors. From our perspective, a group or relationship earns the label cult on the basis of its methods and behaviors, not on the basis of its beliefs. Often, those of us who criticize cults are accused of wanting to deny people their freedoms, religious or otherwise. But what we critique and oppose is precisely the repression and stripping away of individual freedoms that tends to occur in cults. It is not beliefs that we oppose, but the exploitative manipulation of people's faith, commitment, and trust. Our society must not shy away from exposing and holding accountable these social systems, whether they be communities, organizations, families, or relationships, that use deception, manipulation, coercion, and persuasion to attract, recruit, convert, hold onto, and ultimately exploit people. Also, it's important to note that there are many non-cult organizations to which people can dedicate their lives and may experience personal transformation. Many religious and self-help institutions, as well as mainstream political parties and special interest groups, are examples of such non-cult organizations. We do not call them cults because they are publicly known institutions that are usually accountable to some higher body or to society in general. When people join, they have a clear sense of these organizations' structures and goals. Deceptive or coercive practices are not integral to the growth of these organizations or their ability to retain their members. In contrast, cult membership is less than fully voluntary. Often it is the result of intense social, psychological influence and control, sometimes called coercive persuasion. Cults tend to assault and strip away a person's independence, critical thinking abilities, and personal relationships, and may have a less than positive effect on the person's physical, spiritual, and psychological state of being. We wrote this book for the many individuals who've experienced harm or trauma in a cult or an abusive relationship. Because it is awkward to continually repeat the phrase cult or cultic relationship, in many instances throughout this book, we simply shortened it to cult or group, which are meant to be inclusive of all types of cultic involvements. In the same vein, while we recognize the existence of many one-on-one cultic relationships and family cults, we tend to use simply cult leader or leader rather than always specifying leader or abusive partner. Also, we tend to use masculine pronouns when referring to cult leaders in general. This is not to ignore the fact that there are many female cult leaders, but merely to acknowledge that most cult leaders tend to be men. However, whether male or female, most are equal opportunity victimizers, drawing men, women, and children of all ages into their webs of influence. We have included case examples and personal accounts throughout the chapters to illustrate the specifics of involvement, typical after effects, and the healing process. Some examples are composites based on interviews, and our personal and professional experiences with many hundreds of former cult members. Some former members made specific contributions or allowed us to quote them and use their real names, while others asked for pseudonyms to protect their privacy. These latter, as well as the case examples, are indicated in the text by the use of first name and last initial on the first mention of that name. If you are a former cult member, you may identify personally with some of the experiences, emotions, challenges, and difficulties discussed here. Other topics may appear quite foreign and unrelated to your experience. It may be helpful to look them over anyway, as there may be lessons or suggestions that could be useful for your situation. The keys to recovery are balance and moderation, both of which were quite likely absent in the cult. Now you can create a program for recovery that addresses your needs and wants, and you can change it at will to adapt to any new circumstance or needs. The important thing is to do what feels right. Most cults teach you to squelch your gut instincts, but you can now let yourself speak to you. And this time, you can listen and act. From now on, only you are responsible for setting and achieving your goals. Our hope is that this book will be useful to you in your recovery process, and we wish you well.